So the FDA isn't stepping forward saying, oh, we have a new way of doing things, or we have a better way of balancing hormones for women. They're basically correcting a problem they created. So they really created this pool of women who are suffering from 28 to 88. They have created this mess. And so this isn't like this is big news and it's big innovation in women's health, though they are talking about their menopause drugs as some sort of innovation. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, that's also something else that we need to pay very close attention to. But see, it's really hard for women to decipher, what do I hear, what's true and what isn't true. I'd like to get out of this medical menopause groupthink and stop talking about menopause as a condition that has symptoms. We really need to look at menopause as a side effect of hormone deficiency. So women will demand not these low dose therapies the FDA is approving. And that's part of my concern here in the future is, oh, we're only going to give women a little bit of estrogen. We'll give you hormone therapy. We'll remove the black box warning because now we'll be able to sell more patches this way. But we'll keep those patch doses low, but we'll also be able to sell more menopause drugs to manage the symptoms that women still have because we gave them low dose HRT. Hello, everyone. You're listening to the MeNoPause Moxie podcast, where we strategically challenge the status quo on perimenopause, menopause, and female hormone balancing. I'm clinical hormone coach Marie Hoig, here with my producer and co-host Maggie Kuhn. Today, we're talking about a historic moment in women's health, the FDA's decision to remove the black box warning from estrogen therapy. It's being celebrated as a victory, and it is, but as always, there's more beneath the headline. I want to clarify what this discussion actually means and what it doesn't. Hello, Maggie. How about that FDA announcement?
Well, it is indeed really exciting. And as you alluded to, there are, they seem to be talking a little bit out of both sides of their mouth, the FDA. Mm-hmm. So let's get into it. What exactly did the FDA announce?
They announced that they had removed the black box warning from estrogen that had been added in 2003. They acknowledged that for over 20 years that they've caused harm to women based off of fear. They confirmed that estrogen therapy, that estrogen really is a woman's best friend. They also announced that they approved a couple of menopause drugs that we'll talk about a little later on. And they also have committed to educating physicians on hormone replacement therapy.
All right, thank you. So this is progress, but it's really not the full picture. So let's go point by point based on the announcement, and let's break it down for our audience here.
Now, there are about 10 points that stood out to me. And one of those was the removal of the black box warning. And the black box warning, for our listeners who don't understand, it is the strongest type of an alert that the FDA puts on a drug label. And since 2003, labels of menopause treatments that contain estrogen, including pills, patches, sprays, and creams, have warned that their use could increase their risk of uterine and breast cancers, as well as strokes and blood clots.
All right, so this is the fear-mongering part of the black box warning that they're referring to, that they scared a generation of women and doctors with this information.
Yeah, see, removing this is a pretty significant thing, mostly, I'd have to say, for physicians. One of the reasons women don't get the type of HRT that they need is because physicians have an incredible fear about estrogen in general because of these types of things like the black box warning. It's like, why would a doctor want to prescribe a hormone therapy that has the highest warning label that the FDA can honor?
Right. And just to remind listeners that the black box warning was an outcome of the Women's Health Initiative research back in 2002, I believe, that purported that HRT, estrogen in particular, was tied to an increase in breast cancer. So they have unequivocally, with this announcement, said that it does not. And that's why they are removing the black box warning. Is that correct?
It is correct. But they're also acknowledging that this was just a bunch of misinformation that this was based off of.
Well,
And
on the one hand, it's massive for the FDA and the general medical community to admit to such a major screw up.
mhm.
And I believe that Marty Makary, the FDA head, called it a tragedy. So, I mean, they used really strong language to condemn this, and took responsibility, which I don't in my in my lifetime, I've never heard a government organization take responsibility for the harm that they have caused. So this was really significant in that sense.
Yes, and Marty Makary was very strong in his wording, and he was very clear about estrogen. And when you're that clear on how wrong things were, you also have to get an understanding about who, at what expense. I mean, who suffered through this? And so this is significant not only for physicians, and the reason I say for physicians is because they're the ones that write the scripts. If they're afraid of estrogen, women aren't going to get estrogen. If women don't get estrogen, then they won't feel good. If women don't feel good, then they won't be nice to be around. If they won't be nice to be around, they'll just diminish. And it's a lonely place. Estrogen deficiency is a lonely place. But the fact that they know all this information about estrogen and how Marty Makary was just really emphasizing estrogen's benefit. I mean, like you'd think that he'd been working with it for a long time to know for himself, kind of like with me. I'm pretty confident with what I know about estrogen because I spent over 2 decades working with it. I understand how it performs. I understand the power it has on a woman's brain and her body and the functions of her body. And so he hasn't, I'm not certain if he's prescribed hormone therapy before, but certainly not therapeutic dose to see that true impact. But I was pleased to see that they did make this correction. But then there's going to be an aftermath with this, as you know. People will talk about, oh, well, thanks for this misinformation. Then it also leads to the other question is how do we know what they're telling us now is not misinformation? Or how much or what they're saying now is misinformation? What are we going to learn 10, 20 years from now that was misinformation?
Yeah. So you had started to say something about the black box warning being removed, that correction is different than innovation. Can you talk about what you mean by that?
So the FDA isn't stepping forward saying, oh, we have a new way of doing things or we have a better way of balancing hormones for women. They're basically correcting a problem they created. So they really created this pool of women who are suffering from 28 to 88. They have created this mess. And so this isn't like this is big news and it's big innovation in women's health. Though they are talking about their menopause drugs as some sort of innovation, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, that's also something else that we need to pay very close attention to. But see, it's really hard for women to decipher what do I hear, what's true and what isn't true. Because as you hear Marty Makary speak so proudly of estrogen, there's just this underlying conversation that's going on behind the scenes underneath it all that still is this underlying fear, as you mentioned, is like, is this really an advancement in medicine? Is this really innovation? Or are we just correcting a problem? And I know in previous conversations we've talked about this. I mean, is it really an innovation, or they're just taking us back to what you referred to as ground zero?
Well, yeah. I mean, again, it's a huge step to admit that, because apart from the black box warning, what I hear all the time, both from doctors and women, consumers, is that they may or may not be citing the black box warning. That's probably more physicians that are aware of that. But certainly women and other health providers cite the Women's Health Initiative research. So that thing has dogged a generation of women. And it's something like 50 million women lost access to HRT therapy in this intervening 23 years since that research came out. And again, Marty McCary called this a tragedy. And I think he also said something to the effect of the biggest mistake in modern medical history. So, pretty big admission. So, I do think and we're going to talk more again about, we're going to get into the rest of the points you were hearing and the nuance and how they are talking a little bit out of both sides of the mouth. But for me, the biggest takeaway was that admission loudly, clearly, unequivocally. Now, as I understand it, they may have taken off the black box warning, which is the highest level, but are there still warnings on the package insert?
There still are, and I'd like to go through those sometime, but not on this episode. I believe that there's so much conversation to be had right now. And, back to a point that you mentioned about the doctors using the Women's Health Initiative, or people in general using the Women's Health Initiative as a reason for women to get off of estrogen, or for doctors to not prescribe estrogen. What's really interesting is in one of the handouts that I have in our program, that I believe it's entitled "How to Know You're Going to the Wrong Hormone Doctor." And one of those check marks on there is if the doctor quotes the Women's Health Initiative in your visit as why they're not going to prescribe hormone, get up and walk out. You will get nowhere with this doctor because they fear estrogen. But this also leads to my other point, Maggie, is that I got out of this. The second point is that they did acknowledge the past harm. And what I did like about Marty McCary is he didn't, he talked about this with a full throat. He talked about this, making it really clear that we did women a disservice. Not only did we do women a big disservice, we did a big disservice to their families. We've done a big disservice to our communities and society as a whole by keeping women from estrogen. Nobody's been happy. Nobody has been happy. I mean, 50 million women have lost access to life-changing therapy because of the mindset of this black box warning. And the impact that this has on a woman's brain. I mean, all the mental illnesses that women experienced because of this fear and still experience because of this fear.
Yeah, this isn't going to change overnight. This is back. Now we're back to ground zero. At least now we're saying we were wrong. Not the FDA is saying, in the medical community, at least a portion of the medical community, we were wrong. We're so sorry. And now let's go forward.
And that, I have to tell you, you have to really take a moment in this space to talk about what was this harm. Well, let's just talk about this for a moment. About 90% of women's mental illness is directly related to estrogen deficiency. This is big. Anxiety, heart disease, lung problems, digestive problems, osteoporosis, everything about a woman's body is influenced.
Her brain, dementia.
By estrogen. There is no biochemical action that estrogen does not influence. It is the regulator of absolutely everything. And so now we live in a world where women are complaining every day, all the time. They are suffering needlessly. They're going to doctor's office begging for help. They're behaving in ways that go against who they are as a person, because some of the side effects of hormone deficiency, especially estrogen deficiency, are mood swings, anger outbursts, malcontent, insomnia, osteoporosis, joint pain, fibromyalgia, a shriveling vagina, a dry skin, dry hair, dry nails. I mean, it's like the list goes on. I don't think that we should sugarcoat this. We have to acknowledge, really, you guys made us convinced us that this was so bad for us that you were willing to make us so miserable and addicted to these medications and needing these medications, when all along, all we needed was estrogen. So yeah, this really bothers me. But at least they have acknowledged the harm, I guess. I don't know if there's any
They
um
did. I thought it was pretty strong. I thought
yeah,
I thought it
it
was
doesn't
strong.
change. Yeah, but so what do you do with that? When somebody, slices off a finger, I'm really sorry about that. Now I understand. You're still without a finger. You
Well,
know what I
yeah.
mean?
I mean, there is a whole generation of women that are probably real pissed off today after yesterday's announcement because they missed the boat and they have suffered for it. One thing I also liked about Marty McCary's announcement was the acknowledgement of the benefits of estrogen, not just the admission of the
The
faulty
harm.
research and the harm, but he clearly stated the most obvious benefits of bone health, brain health, heart health. I'm not sure if he mentioned mental illness, but I was pleased to hear that. What are your thoughts?
Well, that leads into my third point here is the recognition of estrogen's benefits. I mean, he was really going over the benefits of estrogen. And what's interesting is he's getting his information from experts. He's getting his information from research. He's getting his information from listening to women. So he gets the impact that estrogen has on women. However, he is only getting part of the story. He is only getting feedback and information from these places that are focused on low dose. Even low dose estrogen is beneficial to a woman. And women will tell you how much better they feel on this low dose therapy, but they don't talk much about what happens when this low dose therapy fizzles out. What we don't have, what we do need is our studies and research on therapeutic dose. I mean, if low dose can influence women so much, to have Marty McCary just standing on a soapbox talking about estrogen. In fact, I have his quote right here. I wrote it down because he was very, very, very stern when he said this. With few exceptions, there may be no other medication in the modern era that can improve health outcomes for women on a population level than hormone replacement therapy. And he was most notably talking about estrogen. There is no when I talk about I talk about estrogen to the point where I can sound like a used car salesman. I have never known anything more powerful. When I heard him say that, and I was like, "Amen." I mean, but it's not like he gets it from a clinical level, from an experience as a physician who uses hormone therapy in his practice. It's like he's heard enough. He's heard when women get estrogen, they feel good. But when you give women therapeutic doses of estrogen, that's the real game changer. So, yeah, I was really happy that he talked about estrogen because no, you don't hear government officials talking about estrogen in that light.
Yeah. And, again, providers and others who have been against HRT or scared of it, you know, either will cite the black box warning and or the Women's Health Initiative, faulty research, and or just generally uh, all the things that could go wrong. Like you said, when I talk to people about estrogen and cite the major benefits, bone health, heart health, brain health, mental health, uh, people look at me like, where are you getting that from? You're making that up.
I know a
And
lot of people say that too. It's like there's so much data in the National Library of Medicine that supports this. And when I'm on social media and people are like, where are you getting your information? It's like, you know what? You can get your information the same place I got a lot of my information, the National Library of Medicine. It is loaded with studies on all the benefits of estrogen. It's not like this is not an innovation. This information has been out there. But my concern with these doctors that prescribe hormone therapy, that have always used that black box warning as a reason to not prescribe it when women ask for it, it's like, what are they going to do now? What are they going to do now? Because now patients will come back and say, well, they've lifted the black box warning. So then we have a physician that doesn't know how to prescribe. And now they're going to say, well, I don't know anything about this. And then You typically what happens is the patient starts telling the doctor how to prescribe hormone therapy, and nobody wins that way, as you know.
Right, right.
So yeah, and then the doctors that do, they'll prescribe low dose therapy, but because there is this type, and this leads into the fourth point here, is the role of this, what Marty McCary called as medical groupthink. Now, I'd like to really refer to this as menopause groupthink, because right now they're talking about menopause. Everybody on this panel talks about menopause as an inevitable condition that all women will experience at some time in their life, and that menopause causes these symptoms. That menopause is the cause of the brain decline. That menopause is the cause of osteoporosis and muscle atrophy and heart palpitations, hot flashes, and that sort of thing. But we have to change this. I mean, you've heard me say this many times. We have to change the way we talk about menopause. Menopause is not a condition that has symptoms like everybody's talking about. And I think this kind of leads into your talking out of both sides of their mouth, as when you hear me talk about menopause and what you're learning about it with your hormone therapy and what you've been learning from me over the time that we've been working together is, well, hold on a second. There's a big difference. I mean, because it's not a far-fetched idea to imagine that every woman would experience menopause. But it is if you tell women you never have to experience menopause, if you look at menopause as the true hormone deficiency condition that it is. So menopause is really that 1-year anniversary of not having a period bleed. This doesn't happen if there's plenty of estrogen. This only happens when there's no estrogen. And so menopause is really a side effect of just estrogen deficiency. And so this group think is, oh, menopause is inevitable. Everybody will go through it. So we have to now manufacture these medications. We don't want women to suffer, but we want to give them their hormone therapy, but we'll only give them a little bit. But we'll also manufacture menopause medications to manage the symptoms of menopause and vaginal dryness and UTIs that, as you've heard, how many times have you heard me say that otherwise wouldn't exist if hormones were fully restored?
Yeah, and that's not just theory, that's fact. And you have experienced it with, thousands of patients over the past 2 decades or more in the clinic. You've seen that over and over again, and both you and I have experienced that personally. So
Yeah.
that's not just a theory. You know this in practice.
Plus, there are doctors that practice advanced hormone therapy all over the country. I mean, women are restoring and preserving their menstrual cycles for years and years. And this is so, I'd like to get out of this medical menopause groupthink and stop talking about menopause as a condition that has symptoms. We really need to look at menopause as a side effect of hormone deficiency. So women will demand not these low dose therapies the FDA is approving. And that's part of my concern here in the future is, oh, we're only going to give women a little bit of estrogen. We'll give you hormone therapy. We'll remove the black box warning because now we'll be able to sell more patches
Yeah.
this way, but we'll keep those patch doses low. But we'll also be able to sell more menopause drugs to manage the symptoms that women still have because we gave them low dose HRT.
Yeah.
That's the group think. Yeah, that mentality that you and I talk about. It's like the menopause movement. Yeah, so if you want to know more about this group think, the menopause movement episode will enlighten you on the momentum of this menopause movement. But now there'll be a big momentum with HRT.
Yeah, there'll be a new group think around this. The new group think will be, oh, okay, now we'll do low dose.
Low dose HRT will still have psychotropic drugs and specialized menopause medications to manage the symptoms of hot flashes. Because I can tell you something right now, it is rare for a woman to have a hot flash when her estrogen is at fully restored, not partially restored. Because the restoration, the hormone balancing they're talking about only fills a woman's hormone tank up a third of the way, just a third. So everything that they're talking about is based on all the good things about estrogen is based off of a third. Could you imagine the healing benefits and the protective benefits if women actually got a full tank full of estrogen? And so
Yes, because I'm living it.
I know you are. And I am too. That's why I can talk about it this way. I couldn't talk about this if I was depressed or miserable. This is how I am, Maggie. Have you ever known me to have a mood swing?
No.
I mean, what you see, that every time you and I talk, log on the phone, whatever, you're going to get the same me. My moods don't change. I'm stable. I'm more even if when you and I disagree, we can have a judicial conversation where we're both open-minded and are more focused on solutions instead of getting our feelings hurt or responding in a
Going
way that,
nuclear immediately.
yeah,
I
stepping
mean,
into a rage and then
really?
divorcing each other as friends and colleagues, and I'm never going to talk to her again. And then that's the end of that. And that's because that's what a lot of women do because they don't know how to problem solve. You can't problem solve without estrogen. Estrogen is the problem solving hormone.
Yeah. Hey, Marie, in thinking about this admission and reversal of this research in nearly 25 years, a quarter of a century, has there been other medical dogma that we've been fed in our lifetimes that you can think of that has been reversed? Like what's
I,
coming to mind for me is fat, dietary fat,
I
right?
was just getting ready to say that. Well, dietary fat, but do you remember Susan Powder years ago? If you don't want to be fat, then don't eat fat. I mean, she was a woman with like really short blonde hair, kind of a large woman, and she made a lot of money on these exercise videos telling women, if you don't want to be fat, then don't eat fat. And that was a big movement for a long time. And people like her convinced women, if you don't want to be fat, then don't eat fat. But what is the truth, Maggie?
Well, right. Yeah, we need fats. We need a
Saturated
lot of
fats, plenty of saturated fats. But also doctors that are saying things like, oh, you don't need hormones. My mother went through menopause just fine, or I'm going through menopause just fine. You don't need hormones. A lot of women have heard stuff like that. And there's all sorts of dogma all over the place where there is a movement of people who stand to make a lot of money to convince a group of people of something that just is so absolutely outrageous. And that's actually a part of that group think that I find very annoying.
So I think it's just really good to just remember to have a healthy dose of skepticism around,
And ask good questions. Ask good questions. It's like, where do you get your information? People should be able to answer questions about 5 deep. And that way you know if it's their real information or not.
yeah.
And and so this whole thing that they're presenting the FDA, and it really was never about science. It was about keeping women in a state of hormone deficiency with low dose. We'll keep women off of it as long as you keep women off of estrogen. But so many women are asking for it. The doctors are putting them on it, but they don't know what they're doing. And even with those doctors who don't know what they're doing that are prescribing medicine, they don't hormone therapy, they notice that there isn't an uptick in breast cancer. With all these women, and like I told you, all I've been doing now for almost 2 decades is nothing but working with nothing but therapeutic dose hormone therapy on thousands of women over the years. If estrogen really caused cancer, I wouldn't be in business. I mean, and that why I started the Panacea Sciences Research Foundation was because I saw a reduction of these conditions, a reduction of mental illness, a reduction of cancer, a reduction of osteoporosis, and you name it. Well, this brings me to my fifth point, which is the timing hypothesis. They're telling doctors, the FDA, the medical establishment is telling doctors that you can initiate HRT in a woman within 10 years of the final menstrual period. It's what they call the window. Now, they say this because the longer women go without estrogen, the more damage takes place to the tissues and organs. So if you're pushing it out 10 years, 12 years on and beyond that, then you have more tissue damage. And estrogen is designed to restore and rejuvenate organs and tissues and processes of the body. And when you wait that long to start hormone therapy, then women have a greater chance of having diseased organs and tissues and not healthy enough for this revitalization. So it adds more of a risk. But that's not to say that women don't benefit from some sort of HRT. The best time, as you've heard me state many times, and I've on other podcasts, the best time to start hormone therapy The best time, not the ending time, the best time is somewhere in stage 1, stage 2, perimenopause, with two factors. One, when a woman is having irregular menstrual cycles and they're not going away, and she's decided that she's finished having children. And this typically is in a woman's stage 1, stage 2 perimenopause. This is the ideal time
Well,
because
and
you,
how many women have we heard who have said they've gone to their doctor, they can feel it, they can feel that they're in perimenopause, they feel the hormone deficiency starting to happen, and they're turned away because their doctor says, no, you have to wait until you're in full, menopause, meaning the 1 year anniversary of not having a period. Well, you've lost, 5, 10 years just there.
well, and then you have more damage to the brain and the body. I mean, menopause isn't about a woman's age, it's about her estrogen levels. And that's what we have to, this is what I want women to know. Menopause isn't something you have to go into or, navigate through or try to make it through or survive through. It is something you control. It is something that you could prevent. Menopause is just a woman having her estrogen tank so low for so long that her brain and body are shutting down. And the menstrual cycle is one of those things in the female body that begins to shut down. And this should be the eye opener. So women in their mid 30s, when their periods are off, that is a red flag that you're not producing enough estrogen to regulate a healthy menstrual cycle. And that should be the red flag. Now, the sooner the better. But there's also how old is too old for
Right.
HRT.
Right. So, and I was hoping you were going to get into this with this point about the timing hypothesis, because the thing that I hear most often is within 10 years of menopause or age 60. And then there's a lot of confusion there that doctors think you're 60, now you have to go off HRT. So that whole thing is just completely messed up and misunderstood. Can you talk about, and I know you started to, that the best time to start is stage 1 or 2 of perimenopause when you're done having children. And what was the other one?
Irregular menstrual cycles.
Okay, and irregular menstrual cycles. So let's say you don't start there. So continue on with the timing hypothesis point that you're making, if you would, please.
Well, this whole timing hypothesis was put together, I believe, by the Menopause Society and the FDA. So they're together with this timing hypothesis that you want to start within 10 years. However, every woman benefits from estrogen from puberty to the grave. You just have to be careful when you initiate HRT for women that are mature who have never had estrogen. So if a woman is, say, 12 years postmenopausal and she's never been on hormone therapy, she will have more tissue damage. And you want to be careful because the heart is also an organ that is in atrophy when women lose their estrogen. And estrogen is stimulating. It's designed to rebuild the tissues and rebuild the organs. And so we want to make sure that we're not shocking the body. So there's a couple different ways to approach this. A woman can get on the low dose therapy and slowly titrate that dose up to the point where she's getting some really good benefit from it. If a woman hasn't been on hormone therapy, and she may or may not establish a menstrual cycle with this, but at this age, we're not really looking for that so much, but some women can and do, and they benefit from that. Some women want the benefits of the estrogen at that level, but they don't want the menstrual cycle. So we have conversations about how we address that. Women who have been on HRT for years, like, okay, so now I'm talking about a lot of women are on low dose HRT. When they take therapeutic dose HRT, which is, well, I call it the good stuff, the hormones that are dosed therapeutically so that it actually impacts the brain and body of a woman, she has a better result from her experience and can tolerate a more advanced HRT protocol because she's lived for years, even though with just a little bit of estrogen. her tissues and organs have had some. So she's had some benefit. So some estrogen is better than no estrogen, but therapeutic dose estrogen is the cream of everything. I mean, it's just so you go from low dose therapies to moderate dose therapies to therapeutic optimal dose, and that's really where women want to be. And a lot of what we're talking about here with the FDA and the Menopause Society only has to do with low dose therapies. They are not educated in therapeutic dose therapies. They're not open minded to therapeutic dose protocols because it goes against their narrative of let's just approve these low dose therapies. And then now we can have some more menopause medications that women will continue to need because of the low dose therapies. There's only a small percentage of women who don't do well with hormone therapy at all. I mean, very small. I want to say anywhere between 2 and 5%. But most women, no matter how old they are, whether they've had estrogen or not, benefit from estrogen to varying degrees depending on their overall health.
And this is again a pretty cutting edge approach that you bring, and this is about full restoration. And this is where we get into either menopause or perimenopause prevention and or reversal, which we've talked about in previous episodes. So this is not what Marty McCary at the FDA or the general medical community is talking about. And I do feel a little sad about this because I think while this is all really good news, what it's going to do is open the floodgates to low dose therapy. And there's going to be a new group think around that, and it's going to get real rigid is my concern. And women still won't be able to get therapeutic dose.
And this is why women have to pay attention. Women have to know what's going on with their body. Well, probably one of the most important things women need to understand is estrogen. Women need to understand that they cannot live without it, that every function in their body depends on it. They need to learn about estrogen. They need to learn how much estrogen their body needs, how much estrogen their brain needs, so they can seek out doctors who know how to prescribe therapeutic dose hormone therapies. Because there will be a movement, Maggie. There'll be a movement on women getting on hormone therapy, but they will go to doctors who have no training. They will open up the sample package insert and read the directions, and that will be the extent of their education. And it will be this exercise wheel of using low dose therapies and managing the symptoms of these low dose therapies with drugs and supplements. And that's the way it'll be. And then there'll be another movement beyond that of women saying, hold on a second, just give me more estrogen. I don't want your drugs. I don't want your supplements. I want more estrogen. And without the education and training with that, women won't get what they're looking for. They'll know they need more estrogen. They'll go to the doctor and ask for more. And the doctor will say, I can't give you any more because when I increase your dose, you spot. You have spotting. And I don't know what to do with that. So I'm just going to lower your dose. And this is what it is. And when doctors stop here, they can get the estrogen level somewhere around 180, about 80 to 150. So we'll push it to 150, but this is not near the levels women really need for healing and repair of the brain and body. And there will be a point as women, we continue to do our podcasts and continue spreading the word that menopause is reversible and preventable if you are on the right HRT system. And women will be like, what you talking about? And they start listening. And it's like, okay, I get this. Just like when women come to me and I explain this, they're like, what you say makes so much sense. It's like, I've never heard anything that made more sense in menopause medicine ever. I just heard that the other day. And it's like, but this is the common sense that I want women, because it will be women that drive this next movement. It will be women that say, stop giving me these minuscule doses. My brain and body require more. Give it to me now. And then they'll learn just how much estrogen women really need.
Yeah. There's another timing question that I want to ask about, and we may have touched on it a little bit, but there's this idea that, well, the age of 60 has been thrown out there, and it's very unclear and it's misinterpreted because there's this, it's, as I have heard it, it's start within 10 years of menopause or by age 60 seems to be one piece. Some people interpret that, many doctors, and I've heard lots of horror stories, and I had one myself, of the doctor who says, now you're turning 60, you must go off. That's what they interpret that to mean, that you can only take this until age 60.
I mean, I cannot imagine ever getting off of my estrogen, my hormones. I'm 61. I cannot imagine getting off of my hormones right now. I feel alive for the first time in my life. I've never felt better because I listened to the medical establishment for all these years telling me that my PMS, my PMDD, my endometriosis, my bipolar, that all those things were genetic and that that's just the hand that I was dealt. And so for the first time in my life, I don't have mental illness. I don't have PMS. I don't have PMDD. I don't have endometriosis. I don't have bipolar. I don't have depression. I don't have mental illness. And if somebody were to come to me and tell me, okay, well, you only have another 6 months left on this estrogen, I would tell them over my dead body. I will die with this estrogen vial in my hand. I will not give up my estrogen. There's no doctor right now that could ever talk me off of estrogen, not ever again. And I did go down that road a couple of times and regretted it every single time. I'm like, really? So if get off my medicine, I now have about a half a dozen different mental illness diagnoses and the medications I would need to be on. What kind of life is that? In fact, I don't know how many patients I've heard say, oh my gosh, life isn't worth living
Yeah,
without estrogen. I feel that way. But when you hear that from patient after patient after patient after patient after patient, it's like, okay, well, I'm not the only one.
right.
And you hear that from thousands of women, not just tens of or hundreds, but thousands. You can't deny what you see before you or what you feel in you. Like Maggie, if I told you you had to get off your hormones, what would you say? You'd wring my neck.
Yeah.
No, everybody benefits in life. Our society benefit. Our community benefits for me having hormones. The barista this morning I ran into who always makes my coffee just nice. I mean, it's like everybody benefits. I mean, it's nice to know that every morning when I wake up, I'm going to be happy and that I know I'm going to be able to handle anything that comes my way, no matter what. And to have that self-reliance, that was so empowering to me. That changed my life that I can just depend on what my day tomorrow is going to look like
Yeah.
next week, next month.
So it seems like some of these things, and not a surprise, given again that the FDA just admitted a massive screw up for the past quarter of a century. Um, but so sometimes these rules that the medical community sets forth seem arbitrary. So 60 seems arbitrary. And I seem to recall there's some tie again back to the Women's Health Initiative about age 60. And if I recall, most of the women in that study were over age 60. So that's where they came up with, well, then at 60,
Mm,
but it's
yeah.
not even clear. But again, there's a lot of doctors who have misinterpreted that to say, sure, you can have estrogen until you're 60. Then, sweetheart, you're kicked off.
But if you go to the A4M conference or an IFM conference and you ask any person there lecturing, why would you take a woman off of hormones at 60? Most of them will tell you I wouldn't. Even though this is the general conventional medicine mindset, they wouldn't because they've seen even low dose hormones help women.
Right. Right. So I just
And
wanted to make that point because it's a big misunderstanding in the
it
medical
is.
community, and a lot of women get fed that one. Uh,
And when we heard this in our education and training, we did go back to the clinic and say, hey, these women, we got to get these patients. And when we would say that, they would argue, no, no. I mean, we had to make a decision in the practice as a procedural standard. It's like, are we going to take patients off at 60? Or are we going to keep them on at 60? I mean, what are we going to do? And we listened to the women. We listened to the women. And there were some women we took off hormones and we saw what happened. And they came back and just sobbing and begging to get back on. And we were just like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And then we give them back their hormones. And there's some women that have been on these hormones a long time. And we have patients in their 80s on hormones and
yeah.
some in the early 90s on hormones.
So I think this is still part of the mind shift
Mhm.
that you and your work and your clinical expertise, and what we're trying to do with this podcast is help women towards. There's a whole lot of things that need to be shifted around, and this is yet another one. And women need to understand that there is nothing that says they have to get off at age 60. That is a misunderstanding and a misrepresentation of information that has now also been proved false.
It has. So moving on to the sixth point that I got out of this announcement was they talked about bioidentical versus synthetic estrogen. And I've worked with all forms of HRT, synthetic, bioidentical, compounded, pharmaceutical, all forms with the exception of pellet therapy. And I always say under my breath after that, because it's a barbaric system, and it is. I've seen what happens to women on pellet therapy, and it's not a pretty picture. When I talk about 2 steps back, that's a bit of a nightmare. So they talked about bioidentical versus synthetic. And this conversation always comes up, always in coaching. You know, should I take bioidentical? Because people ask, I need bioidentical. I need bioidentical. There is no real bioidentical. And this is what I want to clarify. All hormones are synthesized to some degree. You can't just pick a Mexican wild yam and rub it on your skin and increase your estrogen levels. It just doesn't work that way. The hormones need to be synthesized. And there are no studies that shows that synthetic estrogen causes cancer. So bioidentical hormone therapy, in fact, when I heard this years ago, when somebody said this, oh, that bioidentical hormones, that's such a marketing term. I remember being appalled. How can you say that? But it's molecularly correct. And I was actually found myself just regurgitating information I heard at the A4M. And then we started seeing, I have clients that live all over the world, and some women only have access to synthetic estrogen. And what's interesting is even women taking synthetic estrogen, we have seen no increase of any sorts of diseases, and it actually behaves in the same way, maybe not on a physiological level, but the body does not respond differently to synthetic estrogen as it does bioidentical estrogen. A woman's brain and body want estrogen in any way, shape, or form it can get it. And it's beneficial to every woman. So if a woman only has access to synthetic hormone, then by all means, you just need to find somebody who knows how to dose it correctly for you. But it just, there's this underlining connotation that bioidentical is better. People talk about it as being molecularly correct to your own biological chemical structure, that your body doesn't know it, didn't produce it. But I have to tell you something, your body doesn't really flipping care. It just wants estrogen, and it responds the same way. A physician would not know if a woman is on synthetic estrogen or bioidentical estrogen based off of the clinical responses that they get. You don't get a lower performance, a low performing hormone therapy with synthetic, or a better performing with bioidentical. A woman's brain needs estrogen and it wants it. So this term comes around a lot. They were trying to differentiate it, talking about that the Women's Health Initiative used synthetic hormones, and that wasn't good. And if they used bioidentical hormones, they would have had different clinical outcomes. No, they would not.
I think in
No.
some ways that feels to me like the medical community has been trying to figure out how to walk back this research and find flaws without admitting fault all this time. So I think that's what that sounds like to me.
It's a circus. People are talking out of both sides of their mouth, or they're getting money from this place. So they have to be careful with what they say, but yet they have clinical responses in women that they're accountable to. And so they have to do it this way. And yeah, and then there's this place of like, well, what the hell is true? And that's why it really does take some time, and why we need more research. We need to put money into these therapeutic dose protocols. We need to know at every juncture how a woman feels. We should have studies on, from, as you've heard me say before, when estrogen is from 0 to 100, where are these results? How does a woman perform? How does her brain and body perform when she's maintained at these levels? Because that's pretty much the highest level that these low dose patches get, is you can get that level up to around 100 of your lab levels. But women really don't start to feel good until it's up closer to 300 is really where they get the benefits. But boy, you don't dare say that to anybody. And that's where this dosing thing is a real issue, because a lot of doctors have never used therapeutic dose HRT to see for themselves what happens to their patients right before their eyes in the clinic.
Yeah. I
So
just had an experience this past weekend of uh, sort of being lured into a conversation in a social situation talking about hormones and hormone replacement and therapeutic levels. And this person responded to me like therapeutic levels was some kind of illegal juicing, you know.
and this is my fear for the future is so we've really have lifting off these veils of menopause and lifting off the veil of the black veil of estrogen and the black label. And now we're going to say, now this is the way that you prescribe hormone therapy. So now there'll be this black veil over how to prescribe HRT. And the Menopause Society and the FDA will set the standard of this is only that you can only get estrogen level this high in women, but they won't have any clinical data to support that. They will make up something. They will use a study, and I've in my research over the years, I cannot tell you how many studies I have read through. And when I get down to the conclusion of the study, it has nothing to do with what the study was about. It was what they wanted people to take from that study because they know most researchers and scientists and physicians only read the conclusion or the analysis. They don't actually read the entire study. And so the studies are biased. We need raw, good clinical data on all forms of HRT because it doesn't really matter which HRT system you use. You just want an HRT system. And that leads me to my next point is the delivery, that the delivery route matters. You bet the delivery route matters. So the seventh point in this that I wanted to talk about was they talked about delivery route. Yes, the delivery route matters, but not in the way that they're saying. They're saying that we want to bypass the liver because of liver metabolism. We want to make sure that women get enough estrogen into their bloodstream the best way possible. And we just found that there's different ways to do that and better ways to do that. They talk about the transdermal's best because you can bypass the liver. But what really matters in female hormone therapy, especially when it comes to the delivery route matters point, is the clinical goal. The physician has to determine what the clinical goal of the patient is. What does the patient want? They want symptoms relief? Well, then you'll prescribe a first or second generation HRT system. Do they want to restore a healthy menstrual cycle? Well, they'll either use a third or fourth generation HRT system. And we go over the 4 generations of HRT in episode 6. If listeners, if you want to learn more about the 4 generations of HRT, not all HRT is the same. First and second generation HRT systems are designed for what these people are talking about. These types of HRT systems are designed to keep women hormonally deficient. It's intentional. Third and fourth generation HRT systems are designed for full restoration. So if a patient's coming in saying, listen, my friend's restored her menstrual cycle with her hormone therapy and she's never felt better and she never complains about her menstrual cycles, give me that. And then we explain to her the risks and the results they may anticipate in the protocol. And the goal is for full restoration. Now the doctor has to choose an HRT system designed to achieve the clinical goals of the patient. Well, if a woman wants to restore a healthy menstrual cycle, well, we know that happens when estrogen at least gets up high enough to wake up the uterus. And it has to be at certain reference ranges. And there are some delivery systems that are designed to achieve that. So women really need to look at HRT as tools in a doctor's arsenal of tricks, of tools to give you what you want clinically. Right. So if you want full hormone restoration, you would use an injection or a transdermal cream. If you don't want to restore healthy menstrual cycle, brain function, and body function, then you'd use a low dose, and the delivery systems will be different. So right. Yes, delivery route matters, but it doesn't matter to the way that they're saying it. Well, it does to a degree, but how we talk about it, delivery route matters because we want to make sure that every woman gets enough of the right hormones the right way and the best way and the most sustainable way. Because the wrong hormone therapy and the wrong delivery system is wrong therapy.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I think there's probably very few women who come in saying, with the primary goal being to restore a menstrual cycle.
No, not very many. I usually have to explain to him, okay, the side effect
But
of getting enough
yes,
estrogen and progesterone is it wakes up your entire body from the inside out.
right,
And but no, I have had them because I've had friends who were
right,
referred.
right. But that is the biggest one that women cite of like, what?
Yeah, no,
That's
don't. Yeah,
crazy.
don't.
So
Yeah,
what it
that's,
really is, what they're really asking for is full restoration to receive the full health benefits.
and they don't even know it's the full restoration they want. That's why the clinician has to understand, what does this patient want? Do they want their brain back? Do they want no more brain fog? Do they want a libido? Do they want to be without physical pain? Do they want to be without joint pain? Do they want to not have depression or mental illness? Are they asking to not have these things? Well, let me see. These protocols get rid of these things because those are side effects of hormone deficiency. So we use a protocol designed to fully restore hormones so the deficiency doesn't exist. Or do we prescribe a low dose therapy that doesn't fix the problem, but we can manage these problems? Tell a woman, okay, we'll give you these low dose hormones and these medications, and now we're going to manage your diseases. And that's the biggest difference here. And this is what women, I think, need to know. It's like, what do you want? Do you want your life back? Do you want your brain back? Or do you want to manage your brain fog with low dose therapies and drugs? Do you want to manage your mental illness, or do you want to be mental illness free like me and thousands of other women who no longer have mental illness because they fully restore their estrogen? I'm not saying that estrogen is going to cure every woman's mental illness, but it'll be pretty darn close to 85 to 90%. And then the doctors will be able to find out what was a hormone deficiency induced mental illness as opposed to a mental illness induced by something else. Because hormone deficiency induced mental illness is a thing, and it's a big thing. And it's something that we'll be talking more about in our future episodes. But this also leads me into my eighth point of the drug approvals.
Ah, yes, there's
They've
got to be an
approved
angle here.
menopause drugs. Yeah. Oh, we've got
Got to
menopause.
make
Oh,
money.
all in the guise of women. Oh, see, we're listening to you. We've removed the black box label. We're going to give you hormones, and we'll even give you bioidentical hormones. Well, we'll give you low dose, but we also have these medications for you that are just for you, just for your hot flashes. Well, for those of you that are listening who have hot flashes, you will never get another hot flash if you restore estrogen in the right range. You don't have to take a drug. And these drugs, Maggie, as you know, we've talked about this, these drugs have horrible side effects
Yeah,
that are worse than the
disappointing.
symptoms women are experiencing that they're taking the drug for. They're not saying that, oh, we've approved this drug. That doesn't mean it's a good drug. It
Yeah,
doesn't mean it's a drug in a woman's best interest. Just because you've approved a menopausal drug doesn't make it good. I mean, why would you give a woman a drug for something you can get rid of if you actually gave her enough hormones? And this is the part that really irks me, is because they're presenting this as if they care about women. We care about your suffering. And that's the part that I didn't like about Marty Makary, because he was talking about estrogen's influence, but what he's not talking about on the other side of his mouth is, but we're only going to give you a little bit of estrogen. Estrogen is so wonderful for you, but we're only going to give you a little bit.
well, and I'd also like to go back to the premise here. They're lifting the black box warning because they have admitted that the research that said that estrogen causes cancer is wrong, is flawed, has not been proven, has not borne out. And so, if that is the case, why don't we just replace estrogen, women's estrogen levels, rather than give them a bunch of drugs with other side effects? So, yes,
There's no money to
but
be made from a
this is the
healthy woman.
circuitous thinking, right? Like,
But no, Maggie, there is no money to be made from off a healthy woman. I mean, women make so much money for so many people. If you took menopause away, there would be drugs that wouldn't need to be manufactured.
there'd be
I mean,
whole
that would
medical
change the
specialties
entire medical.
probably.
Exactly. And this is why I want to speak up about this. And this is what women need to know, because they need to, just because this FDA announcement was a good thing, it's under the guise of they're doing it for you. They're lifting it because they want to sell more HRT, because women are asking for more because of the Oprah menopause movement. And because women are asking for more, they realize, well, how come women aren't getting more? Well, because doctors are afraid of it. Why are doctors afraid of it? The black box warning. Let's remove the black box warning. Let's have these doctors right now more prescriptions for these low dose hormone therapies. But what's the doctor do now that when the hormone therapy stops working and the patient still has hot flashes, night sweats, headaches, and then the pharmaceutical company says, oh, well, guess what? We've approved some more drugs for menopause, because we love women and we want to take care of women. So here's the whole standard of care package that the Menopause Society will lay down as standard of care for everybody, all women. Take these low dose hormones, take these approved menopause medications, and this will be the standard of care. And we will be no different than the UK, which is one of the worst countries for hormone balancing, in my opinion. It's the same way that the government will now dictate at what level your estrogen can be. And I don't want this to happen. This irritates me. The fact that if the medical establishment can tell me that I can't maintain my estrogen between 300 and 500 in a weekly range, I want to know based off of what? Show me the data, because what we need is data showing that most women do best in this range, and that there is a technique and a process to get to this range. And it's not a crapshoot, and it's not a guessing game. There is a technique, a process of a titration adaptation to that place that we call the hormone sweet spot, because there is a place of hormonal balance where women feel better than they can ever imagine. And they're not experiencing hot flashes and night sweats and mood swings. They actually feel stable every day. The drug companies cannot make money off of women's stability. They can't make money if their bodies aren't and brains aren't falling apart. And this is one of the reasons I'm very passionate about this. And that leads me to the ninth point, Maggie, is the physician education and the next standard of care.
Right.
So, oh yeah, we lack education for physicians. I mean, well, why? I mean, y'all are in charge of it. How come you haven't had it up until now? And then, oh, so we need physician education because it's been cleared. And Marty McCary, another panel member, said they don't teach us this in medical school. We don't know. When we go to ask our teachers here why this is happening, they can't give you an answer. And doctors are now left to fend for themselves and try to figure it out for themselves. But as I mentioned, they've acknowledged there's a lack of education. So they're going to provide it. And they're going to provide low dose therapy education, not therapeutic dose. But that's where we come in. We teach therapeutic dose HRT protocols for women. But the standard of care will be low dose therapies and then the FDA approved menopause medications to manage the symptoms of hormone deficiencies. So my concern is this next standard of care, and I don't want women to buy into this. I want women to continue to ask for estrogen until you know your brain doesn't need any more, because that's how we figured out how much estrogen to give women, when they stop asking for more. And when women stop asking for more estrogen, we found that there is a place of hormonal balance where women stop asking for more estrogen. And if you were to give them more, they feel worse. And if they were to have any less, they feel worse. That's why we refer to this, as you know, as the hormone sweet spot, because there is a place of optimal hormonal balance. And the FDA and the Menopause Society haven't a clue on what this is, because they won't even graduate to third generation. They won't even consider full restoration that wakes up the entire female body to put her back in a state of her reproductive prime. Doctors will not be taught to restore hormones. They will be taught how to prescribe low dose HRT and then which drugs to prescribe to manage the symptoms that their patients still have. And then in the 10th point on this, the 10th and final point that I took out of this is they want to make a cultural shift in women's health. And that's the language that they're using. We want to make a shift in how we look at HRT. We want women to feel better. They have been suffering long enough. You can hear the empathy in their voice when they talk about this. But this cultural shift they're talking about is low dose HRT. And this is what we want to move away from. I'm not a big fan of this at all. It's like women are finally being validated. We're going to validate you, but as we're validating you, we're going to continue to prescribe to you low dose hormones, but we'll validate how crappy you feel. But here,
Right.
take this low dose hormone therapy and this FDA approved menopause medicine.
I laughed before because you said cultural shift, and I thought you said cultural shit. And they were
It
kind of the
is.
same because that's what it is that they're feeding us.
And they're trying to make it say, yes, we're listening. We're listening. We listen to Oprah. We're listening. We're watching these menopause documentaries. We hear how horrible you feel. We is big pharma. We hear you. We're going to remove that black box label so that more doctors will prescribe low dose therapies. We hear you. We also hear you that we're going to give you more medicine to manage your symptoms. We hear you. This is the cultural shift. This is all under the guise of women's health. And this is the same tactics they used years ago when they convinced us that estrogen was bad. And so, yeah, I would be skeptical. I would be, okay, so what are you doing? Honestly, I don't look at this as a real movement in really forwarding, because this is, to me, is a game. This is game playing. It's like, it's just, I'll give you a little bit of this, but I'm going to let you believe I'm giving you what you're asking for. But in reality, I'm going to make more money off of your suffering because you won't shut up about it.
Mm. I want to say a couple things. One is when you were speaking before in the ninth point about, when women are satiated and their estrogen tank is full is when they stop asking for estrogen.
Yeah.
Another way you know that, or another way of saying that, is when their clinical indicator score has been suppressed, which is another
Yeah.
episode that we recently did. So I want to direct our audience back to listening to that. So
Yeah, that's the question of hormonal balance. What is hormonal balance?
yeah.
It's not a crapshoot. It's not, it is a destination, and it's a destination that's measured. It's not a guessing game. And that the clinical indicators, you have the clinical indicator assessment that you take the morning of right before a woman gets her blood drawn, and you can see how estrogen works in real time, because estrogen works in real time. If you're falling apart, if a woman is falling apart on the kitchen floor or the bathroom floor, go to pull her blood out, she'll probably be in the double digits of estrogen. It's like clockwork. And this is why I'm just gobsmacked that there isn't more data on this, because it's not that difficult to trace and to track. I mean, if I can do it, I'm not a physician, but boy, because they haven't been doing their job and we don't have the research, and I've been able to see clinically what happens when women get enough hormones and what happens when they don't. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out. And then women will go through this and then realize, okay, y'all have been lying to us. You told us that you were lying to us. Then now you're telling us that you're telling us the truth. But they're going to find out in about 5 years that, yep, they continue to lie to you. Even though they told you they're now telling you the truth, they lied to you by omission. They're telling you they're giving you HRT, but they're not giving you enough. And the lying by omission is, you actually need more than what we're giving you. But if we give you what you really need, we can't make money off your suffering.
Right. And again, pulling it back to the announcement that was just made, if estrogen doesn't cause cancer, which they have irrefutably now said it does not, then why aren't they giving enough for women to be satiated? So therein lies the question, therein lies the riddle, and, what yet needs to be solved and addressed. So what's next? How should women respond to this news?
Well, I'd say it's something to be celebrated, but I really be cautious. I think it's a guise. I think they're just peeling that back so they can sell more FDA approved menopause medications. Women won't really get enough of the right hormones, even if they do lift the black box warning. So yeah, there's a movement now to recognize HRT as a great clinical tool to help women, but that is a symptoms management tool along with drugs and supplements. So yeah, just keep one eye open. What are they going to do next? Women really need to learn how estrogen works in their body. They need to know how much they need. Once women realize the impact estrogen has on their brain and body and how much they need to feel good and stay healthy, they can find a doctor who's trained in therapeutic dose protocols for full restoration. So I'm not a fan of menopause management. I'm a fan of menopause prevention and reversal by way of therapeutic dose HRTs. So I recommend women, if you're a woman here, even if you're a woman here on HRT listening in and you still have symptoms, well, this is what the standard of care HRT system is like. You're actually right where you should be. And this is the low dose protocol. If you don't want to live this way any longer with low dose therapies and having these symptoms that you're trying to find a way to manage with tweaking your dosages or taking medications, get on a therapeutic dose HRT system. In fact, better yet, go to advancedhormonebalancing.com and book a free consultation. Let's see if one of our advanced hormone balancing programs is a good fit for you. There is no reason women should have to live one day of their life hormonally deficient. But I also want to talk to the physicians out there who prescribe hormone replacement therapy. There is a better way. You do not have to spend your career tricking women into think that they're getting good care by prescribing low dose HRT and then prescribing a bunch of medications to treat their symptoms of hormone deficiency. I strongly encourage you to really help out women and learn what estrogen really does to a woman, how much estrogen women really need. Learn how to prescribe it and then see for yourself with your own eyes. Don't take my word for it. Learn about it, learn the concept, learn the clinical application technique, and then see for yourself as you get good at restoring hormones for women. You will notice that patient after patient after patient will tell you, oh my gosh, is this all I needed all along? Your practice would change. And you can be one of those influencers that actually can change the world for women. Could you imagine if every woman had enough estrogen? We need more prescribers to learn therapeutic dose hormone therapy. If you want to learn how to prescribe therapeutic dose HRT protocols, then go to panaceasciences.com/physicians, and you can go right straight to the physicians page. At Panacea Sciences, we teach physicians how to prescribe advanced hormone therapy for women. We also teach health coaches how to be clinical hormone coaches and hormone coaches because they don't really know a thing about hormone therapy. We teach them how to be clinical hormone coaches that work with these prescribers. We also have a hormone clinic that helps women who want to get rid of the symptoms that they're managing with low dose therapies. And we're all about the research on getting women the right information and getting the right data so that we can get the right protocols. If you want to know where you stand with your hormone balancing, go to hormonebalancetest.com and you can take the clinical indicator assessment we were talking about. And then you'll have the opportunity to talk to somebody about that if you choose to do so.
So I also want to invite our listeners to be sure to share this episode with your friends, your doctor, your husband, partner. This is really time to change the story. And I invite our listeners to be part of the movement that we're looking to create, a real mind shift movement.
The menopause prevention movement. That's
Yes.
what we need. Yeah. Thank you so much, Maggie, for being a part of this podcast. And listen, if there's something you'd like Maggie and I to talk about on our show, we would certainly consider it. So email me at moxie@menopausemoxie.com and let me know what's on your mind. Thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate you listening to us. It means a lot because, as you can see, Maggie and I, we're done keeping our voices quiet about this. We believe women are getting the shaft, and they're still getting the shaft, even though there are advancements in medicine. So thanks for joining us today. And remember that everybody benefits when your hormones are balanced. I'm Marie Hoig, and this is the Menopause Moxie podcast.